one of the things that is happening at some journals, and that may be relevant with the most recent case at the Rican, where this sort of way to create stem cells, this very easy way to create stem cells called STAP cells, and now is these two papers, these sort of what were thought to be really important fundamental papers that came out in January, are now being retracted, or at least the authors have requested both to be retracted, is, well, what happened in the process? What actually happened for that retraction? You could really apply this to any retraction that happens. You could apply it to any correction. You could apply it to papers that are cited millions of times and seem to hold up. What happened during the peer review process? And one thing that is happening at some journals and at some publishers is that they're moving to an open peer review process, where not only do you know who did the peer review, but the peer review reports themselves are made public. And there are various ways to do this. As a matter of fact, I'm sometimes asked, probably once every few months, to peer review papers because there is this sort of growing field of retraction research or fraud research, research into these things. And for better or for worse, it's about the only thing that I'm actually an expert in. So I'm asked to review papers, and what I say to people is, look, mostly for journalistic conflict of interest reasons, I can't sort of give an off-the-record, which is essentially what a confidential review would be. I can't give an off-the-record review and suggestion. That would be like when Roger Ailes was giving advice to the Bush White House. I mean, it's obviously on a much smaller scale, one could argue. But the point is that I always say, look, it has to be public. I need to be able to say that I have peer-reviewed this paper, and I need to be able to publish the review, regardless of whether you do that yourself. And if I cover this, then I need to be able to say that. And most of the journals that have asked me are fine with that. But a lot of them are journals that publish the peer reviews anyway. I peer-reviewed a paper for F1000 Research, actually just last week. And, they warn you from day one when they ask for the review, this will be public, your name will be attached. Everything you say is sort of on the record. It's a bit like, everything you say can and will be used against you, the sort of Miranda rights in the U.S. There is an argument that publishing those, even alongside the paper, not even waiting for any sort of fallout, if any happens, would be a really good thing for science. Would certainly, add to transparency. I think I wouldn't say that it's a concern I have, but legitimate concern that a lot of people have raised is there is a tremendous hierarchy in science. In fact, I would go as far as to say that there's a bit of an omerta, the sort of silence. You don't betray one another. And one of the ways that you can betray people is to say that this paper is crap or this paper wasn't very good. Now, if you're only doing that on papers that get published, your comments probably are not of the this is absolute crap variety, but this needs to be changed or this isn't perfect. But science has a really hard time figuring out, or has had a really hard time figuring out how to ensure the sort of safety, and I really do mean safety, and I don't mean personal safety, but career safety, of younger scientists, of junior scientists, who speak critically, as they well should, about papers that senior scientists publish or that competitors publish. So we need to find a way, and it may be open peer review, it may be something else, we need to find a way to allow people to speak freely and openly and critically about papers, and I don't mean in an insulting way, there's no room for that either, but in an appropriate critical way that says, here's some issues, and here's what can be fixed, here's what should be fixed, without jeopardizing their careers. We haven't figured that out yet. So open peer review is a solution to some problems, but it isn't quite a solution to that one, and so figuring that out is going to be something else. You could argue that when a paper is retracted, there is more of a sort of responsibility of the publisher, of the editor, and even of the peer reviewer to sort of explain how it was accepted to begin with, if it's something that peer review should have caught. I would second that. I would agree with that. But I actually think that rather than sort of take that approach to only retracted papers, because if anything, it will make it even more difficult to retract a paper, because then you know that everything you've ever said is going to be public. It's sort of like, the reason that a lot of people don't want to go to court, even if they're right about, say, a lawsuit, is they don't want to go through discovery. They don't want their dirty laundry being hung out for no particular reason. I'm sympathetic to that. We're human beings. So we need to sort of, again, figure out a way to make this all work. And I go back to basic principles. If you change the incentive system so that papers are not so sacred and so fetishized by funding agencies, by universities, by journals, of course, you might actually get somewhere with all this. But I would be the last to claim that I have all the answers. I'm just trying to help people get some information to ask better questions.